This video explores mature emotional themes and complex relationship dynamics. It does not contain explicit content, but viewer discretion is advised. All characters depicted are consenting adults over the age of 18. I never thought a look could undo me. But that night, in the dim kitchen light of our father's house, my stepbrother gave me one, and everything I believed about us shifted in a heartbeat. We hadn't grown up together. That's important to know. Our parents married when we were already adults. He was 24, I was 22. By then, we were two strangers thrown into a single story, bonded by title alone, stepbrother, stepsister. Nothing more. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Kai was the kind of guy who never quite fit into a box. Quiet but observant. Always seeming to exist just outside the noise, watching from the edge of the room like he saw more than he let on. When I first met him at our parents' awkward wedding dinner, he nodded politely, gave me a subtle smirk, and barely said 3 words the entire night. I didn't think much of him after that. But somehow, over the following year, life kept nudging us into the same spaces. Holidays, birthdays, quiet weekends when both of us happened to be visiting Dad and Maria at the same time. And slowly, almost without realizing it, I started looking forward to those moments. The way he made dry jokes no one else caught. The way he remembered the small things I said, like how I liked my coffee or the name of my childhood dog. The way he'd glance at me when no one else was looking, like he was still trying to figure me out. And then, last weekend happened. We were both staying at the lake house, a late spring escape before life picked up again. Our dad and his wife were out for the evening, leaving the two of us alone for the first time in that creaky old place. It was past midnight and I couldn't sleep. I wandered downstairs in search of tea or something warm, hoping to shake off the restlessness. The kitchen was quiet, the moon casting silver shadows across the tiled floor. And there he was. Kai stood by the counter, barefoot, shirt loose and sleeves rolled to his elbows, sipping something from a mug like he'd been waiting. We didn't say much. I asked what he was doing up. He shrugged. Said he couldn't sleep either. And then he looked at me. Not like a stepbrother. Not like someone who'd known me for a year through shared dinners and holiday photos. It was a look that stripped the air from the room. A look that paused time. Like I was the only thing that existed in that moment. My heart tripped over itself, loud in my chest. I remember gripping the edge of the counter, pretending I was fine. But inside, everything was crashing. It wasn't just the look, it was what it meant. The unspoken thing neither of us had dared acknowledge until then. That something between us had shifted. He opened his mouth to say something. But before he could, the front door creaked open, our parents were home early. The moment shattered like glass hitting tile. I turned away, fast. He said nothing. I said nothing. But the look lingered. And now I can't stop thinking about it. I didn't sleep much after that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, his eyes, the silence between us, the heat that curled in my stomach when he looked at me like that. Like I was more than just his stepsister. Like he knew I felt it too. And I did. But that's the problem, isn't it? I spent the next day trying to act normal. Breakfast with our parents felt like a performance. I smiled too much. Laughed at things that weren't funny. Every time Kai entered the room, my body tensed like I was waiting for something to happen, and dreading it at the same time. He didn't look at me, not once. But I felt him there. The tension between us had become something real, something thick enough to breathe in. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to run from it or reach out and grab it with both hands. The truth is, I'd been burying these feelings for months. They didn't start with that look. That was just the moment I stopped lying to myself. It was the way he'd defend me in subtle ways when our parents got too nosy. The way he once drove 2 hours to help me move apartments, claiming he happened to be nearby, even though he definitely wasn't. Or how he never pushed, never asked personal questions, but always listened when I answered the ones no one else thought to ask. But we're not supposed to feel this way, are we? That word, stepbrother, it changes things. Even if we didn't grow up together. Even if there's no shared childhood, no real history beyond the last 12 months. The world doesn't care about those details. They hear one word, and suddenly there are rules. Still, it doesn't stop the dreams. I woke up the night after the kitchen incident, heart pounding, the echo of his voice in my mind. I couldn't remember what he said, only that it felt like he was trying to tell me something important. I sat up, shaky, and padded quietly into the hallway. The lake house was dead silent. But as I passed his door, I paused. There was light under the crack. I stood there, frozen, hand half raised to knock. I don't know what I was hoping for, clarity, maybe. Closure. Or the opposite of that. Then I heard it. A soft thud. Movement. Footsteps crossing the room, and the light flicked off. He knew I was there. And he didn't open the door. I stayed another 2 days. We barely spoke. He avoided being alone with me like the silence between us might say too much. It was almost worse than that moment in the kitchen. Because now there was a before and after. Now, there was something we were both pretending didn't exist. But the worst part? I think he's just as scared as I am. Not of what we feel. But of what happens if we stop pretending. The air felt heavier when I got back to the city. Everything that used to ground me, my apartment, my job, my friends, suddenly felt thinner, like the ground wasn't as solid as it used to be. Kai had followed me into my thoughts, into my silence. It wasn't just about what had happened. It was about what hadn't. The unresolved. The unfinished. The way the door never opened. I told myself to move on. To compartmentalize. To bury it. That's what we do when feelings are inconvenient, right? We rationalize them until they shrink into something survivable. But that was easier before he texted. Hey. I'm going to be in the city next week for work. We should catch up. Simple. Casual. Completely normal for step-siblings, right? Except I stared at that message for a full 10 minutes before replying. Sure. Let me know when. I didn't sleep that night. By the time he arrived, I had convinced myself that it would be just coffee, just small talk, just surface-level pleasantries. But then he walked into the cafe wearing that same gray jacket, the one I always liked on him. And when his eyes met mine, something cracked open again. It was like the kitchen moment hadn't faded, it had just been waiting. We sat by the window. Talked. Laughed, even. But it was all underlined with something tense, something unsaid. I kept watching his hands. He kept watching my eyes. And then he asked something that knocked the air out of me. Did you feel it too, that night? He didn't specify. He didn't have to. I froze. Coffee halfway to my lips. That question didn't belong in this version of our story, the one where we stayed on our separate, safe paths. But here it was. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not with people sitting 2 feet away, not with the truth bubbling in my throat. He nodded like he understood. Then he said something even worse. I've been trying to unfeel it ever since. That's when the real struggle began. Because now it wasn't just about what we wanted. It was about who we were supposed to be. About family expectations, about lines that feel thin but mean everything. Maria, his mom, my stepmother, was planning a family weekend next month. I was supposed to stay in the same house again, eat dinner at the same table, pretend like everything was normal. But I wasn't sure I could do that anymore. And things were only getting more complicated. A few days later, I ran into my ex completely random. He asked if I wanted to catch up. I almost said no. But then I saw Kai's message still sitting unread from the night before. I wish things were different. But I don't know how to fix this without breaking something. So I said yes. I went. And I laughed more than I thought I would. For a second, it felt easy, safe, even. But the whole time, I kept waiting for my phone to light up. For his name to appear. For something I didn't want to want. And when it finally did, it was a photo. A view from his hotel window. Wish you were here. I didn't reply. But I stared at that photo for hours. Because the worst part wasn't that I missed him. It was that I didn't know if I was strong enough to stay away anymore. It all came to a head the night of the family weekend. I had told myself I wouldn't go. I packed a bag anyway. I said I'd stay for one night, maybe two. But by the time I walked through the front door of the lake house again, something in me knew, this weekend wouldn't be like the last. The house was full. Maria was bustling in the kitchen, humming, already pouring wine. Dad was outside fiddling with the grill. Everyone was exactly where they were supposed to be. Except me. I stood in the entryway, bag in hand, heartbeat hammering in my throat. And then I saw him. Kai stood at the top of the stairs, one hand resting on the banister like he'd been waiting for this moment. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Our eyes locked, and everything fell away. The noise, the casual laughter, the smell of grilled vegetables wafting through the air, it all blurred into the background. What remained was the weight of everything unspoken. Later that evening, the house settled into quiet. Our parents went to bed early, exhausted from the wine and sun. I sat alone on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the lake shimmer under the moonlight. I heard the sliding door open behind me. And then he was there. Kai sat down beside me. He didn't look at me right away. He just breathed, slowly, like he was counting seconds to keep himself calm. My hands were clenched in the blanket. I knew what was coming before he said a word. I can't keep pretending this doesn't exist, he said quietly. I've tried. God, I've tried. But you're in everything now. And he broke off, eyes closed. I'm at war with myself. I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't composed anymore. He looked wrecked. Sleepless. Raw. You think I'm not? I whispered. You think this doesn't eat me alive every time I hear someone say your name like it's supposed to mean something safe? His head turned toward me, fast. Then why won't you let me in? Because I don't know where this goes. My voice cracked under the pressure. Because I'm scared, Kai. I'm scared of what happens when we stop pretending. I'm scared of what it does to our family. To us. We were both breathing hard now, like we'd been running in place and didn't realize it. The silence stretched, brittle as glass. Then he reached for my hand. It was the softest thing. Barely a touch. But it felt like fire. My breath hitched, and I didn't pull away. I'd break the rules for you, he said, voice like gravel. Even if it costs me everything. Tears burned at the back of my throat. I wasn't ready to say it back. Not yet. But I didn't move. And that's when we heard it. A soft creak. Footsteps behind us. We turned at the same time. Maria stood in the doorway. Watching us. Frozen. Everything stopped. Professional disclaimer. This story explores mature emotional them. Maria didn't say anything, not at first. She just stood there, barefoot on the porch threshold, arms crossed, her face unreadable in the silver wash of moonlight. Kai's hand slipped from mine like we'd both been caught doing something unforgivable. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came. Maria blinked, like she'd been holding her breath, and then finally, she spoke. I was wondering how long it would take, she said, voice low. Calm. Too calm. That stunned us more than if she'd screamed. Kai sat up straighter, jaw clenched. What do you mean? She stepped forward. I've seen it for months now. The way you look at each other. The tension. You think no one else can feel it? She shook her head. But it's not what you think. My stomach turned. Something in her tone, too knowing, too sad, made my skin go cold. What are you talking about? I asked, my voice barely audible. Maria looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes softened. I didn't want to tell you this, not like this. But maybe I should have a long time ago. She hesitated, then added, you and Kai, you're not actually step-siblings. The world tilted under me. I stared at her, waiting for her to say more. For the punchline. For something that made sense. She continued. Your father and I, we never filed the marriage certificate. We separated before we made it legal. It didn't feel right. But you were both already grown, and it was easier to let everyone believe it had happened than to explain the truth. I didn't think it mattered. Kai stood now, frozen in place, face pale. You never told me. You were away at school, she said softly. I didn't think you'd care. And by the time we talked again, we were just separate lives. It didn't feel necessary. I couldn't breathe. My entire chest was tight, like the air had been sucked out of the world. So you're saying, I began slowly, trying to steady my voice, we've been pretending to be siblings for over a year, for no reason? Maria looked at both of us, guilt swimming in her eyes. I'm saying the thing you were most afraid of, the reason you've been holding back, was never real. Not legally. Not by blood. Not by anything that actually matters. She turned and walked back inside, leaving the door open behind her like a wound. The silence that followed was unbearable. Kai looked at me, voice hoarse. Does this change anything? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to scream everything. But instead, I whispered the only truth I could find. I don't know what's real anymore. And deep down, I knew the twist hadn't fixed anything. It had only made everything more dangerous. Because now there was nothing stopping us, except ourselves. We didn't speak again that night. Kai went upstairs without a word. I stayed on the porch long after the door clicked shut behind him, wrapped in silence and moonlight, replaying Maria's voice like a broken loop in my head. You're not actually step-siblings. Those 6 words had broken every boundary I'd built to protect myself from this. From him. From what we both felt. There was no name for this anymore. No definition to hide behind. No excuse to stop us. But suddenly, that was the scariest part of all. The next morning was worse. The lake was foggy, the air thick and still. The whole house felt like it was holding its breath. I didn't see Kai at breakfast. He didn't answer my knock. The car was still out front, so I knew he hadn't left, but emotionally, it felt like he'd already vanished. Maria didn't speak of the night before. She just offered me coffee and a smile that was too gentle, like she knew something I didn't. Maybe she did. By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked to the dock. That's where I found him, sitting at the edge with his feet in the water, staring out across the lake like he was trying to escape into it. "I didn't leave," he said before I could speak. "Thought about it. Couldn't." I sat beside him, close enough to feel the warmth from his shoulder, not quite touching. "I wouldn't have blamed you." He glanced at me, eyes red-rimmed and tired. "You say that like I didn't fight for this. Like I haven't been walking through fire just to not touch you. Every second we've spent pretending has been torture." My voice cracked. "Then why did you pull away when it stopped being pretend?" He looked down at the rippling water. "Because I realized something last night. It wasn't the rules holding me back, it was the fear of what it would mean to finally have you. Really have you. No excuses. No labels." I didn't speak. "I kept telling myself we couldn't," he continued, "when really, I was scared of what happens if we do. If we let go of the guilt. If we stop punishing ourselves." That's when I broke. The tears came fast, unexpected. "You think I don't feel the same?" I whispered. "You think I haven't laid awake every night wanting you, and hating myself for it?" We were silent, shaking beside each other, broken by the same truth. Then, slowly, he reached for my hand again. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I took it. He pulled me into him, and we just stayed there, foreheads touching, breath tangled, the weight of everything crashing around us and somehow holding us still. No one else. No rules. Just us. "I love you," he said. And I believed it. I felt it. In my bones. "I love you too." That could have been the ending. A perfect, poetic resolution. But as we walked back toward the house, his phone buzzed. He stopped. Stared at the screen. Went pale. "What is it?" I asked. He turned to me slowly, a shadow in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "It's my dad," he said. "He wants to meet. Says there's something I need to know." The message from Kai's dad was the last thread we didn't know we were holding. They met the next day, somewhere neutral, quiet. When Kai came back, he looked like a man who had seen a version of himself he never expected to meet. His dad had told him the truth. He wasn't Kai's biological father. It was a secret his mom had kept for years. The man he thought was his dad wasn't. And just like that, every identity Kai had built was called into question. But weirdly, that truth didn't break him. It freed him. We sat together later that evening, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, just us. No tangled histories. No imagined sins. Just two people who had spent too long avoiding something real because we were too scared to claim it. "I feel like I finally know who I am," he whispered. I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder. "And I feel like I can finally stop pretending." Our parents accepted it. Awkwardly at first. But with time and love and a lot of honest conversations, they came around. Because they saw what we saw, this wasn't a scandal. It was just us, finding something beautiful in the most unexpected place. There's a lesson in that. Love doesn't always show up the way we expect it to. Sometimes, it walks through the door with a familiar face and changes your whole world. The only question is, are you brave enough to follow it?